If I had to pick one thing aside from paper, pencil, and eraser to be able to draw during the apocalypse, I'd pick this. This little thing is the Unipin felt tip technical pens. It's my favorite inking tool of all time. For its price, it's absolutely worth your money. If you're new to traditional inking, I highly recommend this because it's easy to learn how to use compared to the fancy pens.
I actually can do more precise strokes using this, and since it's a felt tip, it's less likely you'll damage your paper compared to these sharp metal tips. My hand is a bit heavy, so I have had scenarios where I tore the paper using a G-pen. Since I prefer using watercolors when I paint traditionally, these Unipin pens are waterproof and smudge-proof, so I don't have to worry about any ink bleeding on my drawing. It's also quite flexible when it comes to line work. You can do thin strokes like this, or you can do different line weights like this, which gives more appeal to your drawings.
To show you how you can ink with this pen, I made a quick sketch.
Type in the comments if you recognize this character. I'm using a half-long size vellum paper. I picked this size because it's big enough to be able to draw small details, but small enough for me to be able to finish this quickly. So the first thing I usually do is draw a thin line art. Nice and simple single stroke lines will do. If you're new to my channel and you haven't watched my other videos, my biggest tip when it comes to inking or cleanup is that you should not trace your sketch. Instead, use inking as an opportunity to improve and fix the sketch. Another tip I can give you is not to press too hard when you're inking because the ink will pile up there and you will have this weird dot at the start of your stroke. Don't do your stroke slowly. This is the primary reason your lines will look wobbly. See, if we do strokes slowly like this, our hands will start to shake. So the solution for this is to do your strokes in a fast sweeping motion. What you can do is practice the motion a couple of times before putting the ink on paper. When doing inks, there are some angles that your hands might get uncomfortable, and if you force it, your lines might not look so good. In my case, I feel more comfortable doing curves that are arcing to the right, but if I do it in the opposite direction, it makes my hands uncomfortable. Instead of forcing your hand, it's easier to just rotate the paper. If you like to have pointy ends on the lines like this, at the start of your stroke, start the movement of your hand as you put the pen on the paper, and at the end, instead of just instantly lifting the pen off the paper, do a slight flick as you lift the pen. I film my hand in slow motion so that you can see the flicking motion better. Once we're done with our inks, we can erase the pencils. Now you can leave it like this and just proceed to color, but it looks a bit plain. So the next thing we're gonna do is make some of the lines thicker. It's quite easy to do, especially now that we have the thin lines as a guide. We're just going to repeat the strokes on the areas we want the lines to be thicker. I normally thicken the lines or areas where the shading would fall. So in my head, I'm imagining the drawing in color, how I will do the lighting, so I can figure out where the shadows are. For this drawing, I would thicken the lines on the areas by the chin, the underside of the hair, the bottom part of the nose. I would also thicken the lines by the elbows, thumbs, this side of the torso, the breast, and the underside of the ribbon. And just like that would make this drawing look more appealing. Here's a comparison with just the thin lines earlier. Now you can proceed to coloring, but for this, I decided I would just stick to black and white. The next thing we'll do is add some tones to add a bit of contrast. We'll be using a technique called hatching for this. We're not going to go overboard. The goal is to simply add dimension to the drawing. The area I'll go heavy on the hatching is her coat because her coat is reddish, so we have to add some tones to depict that. It can be daunting to add hatching at the start because if we go overboard, it can screw up the drawing. So before we do the hatching with inks, let's do some pencil guides first, like this, just so we can see where the hatching will fall. Starting with the hair, she has light brown hair, so I won't go heavy on the hatching here, but what we're gonna do is add texture so that it looks like hair. Just a bunch of nice loose curved lines would do the trick. I actually don't like to add hatching on the face because it tends to look messy, so I'll just leave it as is and just add some tones on the eyes. For her inner clothing, let's just add some bits of hatching to depict shading on the folds. Remember to pay attention to the volume and angle your hatching lines accordingly. For the coat, let's do some cross hatching following the volume so that we can depict some semblance of color. The distance between the lines will determine how light or dark it is. The color is darker than the coat, so the lines will be closer there. Afterwards, we're gonna add shading by adding some hatching in a different direction with the lines slightly closer to each other. Once we're done with our hatching, we can erase our guidelines and we can admire our finished drawing. Now, we can enhance this further by adding some black parts. While it is possible to do it with these technical pens, it isn't very efficient because you're gonna run out of ink fast. Since the focus of this video is these pens, I won't add them. But if you like to add some black on your drawings, you can use this brush, and if you click this video right here, I shared my personal traditional inking kit that is beginner friendly and budget friendly. If I'm allowed to bring more tools to the apocalypse, I'd take this as well.